How many nights have you lost sleep worrying about something you cannot control? What if I told you that your peace of mind and your success depend on your ability to surrender the outcome, not control it? Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever chased a dream so hard that you started losing sleep, doubting yourself, and exhausting every ounce of faith you had left? You may even feel like time is running out. But let me ask you a powerful question. What if the thing you want most is already on its way, and the only thing standing in its path is your inability to relax and let it unfold? Now listen closely, because the truth I'm about to share has altered the destiny of millions who came before you. Success does not come through force, it comes through focus and faith. The person who relaxes in the face of uncertainty holds more power than the one who panics under pressure. Why? Because worry repels opportunity. But faith attracts it like a magnet. You see, your mind is your greatest asset, and it thrives when it's free of tension, free of doubt. When you accept that if God wants it to happen, it will, you eliminate the poison of fear. You begin to act with clarity instead of desperation. That clarity opens doors. That peace sharpens your vision. That confidence multiplies your influence. So no, this is not passivity, it is alignment. You still prepare. You still plan, you still pursue with intensity, but you stop gripping so tightly that your dream suffocates. You give it air, you give it room, you give it time. That's where the miracle happens. When your desire is burning hot, but your mind is calm, you become unstoppable. The world can't ignore a soul so certain. So relax, not because you've given up. Relax because you finally understand what's meant for you cannot miss you. And if God wants it to happen, it will at the right time, in the right way, with the right people. Let go of the how, master the now, and watch what unfolds. Faith is the master key to mental peace because it anchors the mind in certainty while the world swirls in uncertainty. It provides a stabilizing force that allows a person to navigate chaos with composure, to face adversity without surrendering to panic, and to maintain vision when the future remains unseen. Faith in its truest form is not passive, it is active belief in the unseen, the unproven, and often the illogical. It is the refusal to be dominated by circumstances, and instead to dominate those circumstances by adopting a higher mental position. The individual who possesses deep faith does not need the evidence before taking a step. They understand that the evidence will follow their action. This confidence becomes a mental fortress, allowing peace to reside even in the middle of life's fiercest storms. Consider a man who has lost his job unexpectedly. Without faith, his mind becomes a breeding ground for anxiety. He begins to obsess over rent payments, his reputation, the uncertainty of the job market. Every thought compounds his worry. But if that same man possesses unwavering faith that this setback is merely a setup for something greater, his mind remains calm, open, and creatively active. Rather than spiraling into fear, he begins to view the situation as an opportunity. He might start exploring long-forgotten passions, connect with people he would have never approached before, or even launch a business he had only dreamed of. His faith doesn't eliminate the problem, it transforms his relationship to it. He doesn't need to see how it will all work out to feel at peace. His peace comes from knowing that it will work out because he trusts in a greater plan, a higher power, and the power of his own perseverance when aligned with that belief. Now picture a young woman preparing for a major medical exam. She has studied endlessly, sacrificed sleep, and done all that is within her power. The night before the test, she lies in bed, heart pounding, thoughts racing. What if I fail? What if all this effort is wasted? At this juncture, logic has reached its limits. She's done everything possible from a rational standpoint. It is here that faith becomes essential. If she can shift her mind from anxiety to assurance, she will enter that exam room with calm, clarity, and control. Faith silences the noise. It says, "You've done your part, now rest," knowing that the outcome is in divine hands. That mental shift alone can elevate her performance. Fear scrambles the mind. Faith organizes it. Fear anticipates failure. Faith anticipates favor. In the presence of faith, mental peace is no longer optional. It becomes the natural state. Worry is misused imagination because it takes the same powerful mental faculty designed to create visions of progress, possibility, and purpose, and instead turns it inward to rehearse failure, exaggerate risk, and paralyze initiative. The human mind is a magnificent projector. It can construct entire futures, build empires out of ideas, and solve problems that haven't even arisen yet. But when worry takes control, that same imagination becomes a tool of torment. It magnifies worst-case scenarios and makes them feel as though they're already real. Instead of being used to architect dreams, the imagination becomes enslaved to fear, constantly drafting blueprints for disaster. This is not a harmless habit. It is a destructive one because the subconscious mind cannot always distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is actually occurring. When worry dominates thought, the body responds as though the threat is present, the mind loses its edge, and progress grinds to a halt, not because of reality, but because of a false mental narrative. Imagine a man starting a new business. He has the skill, the knowledge, and even the funding to launch successfully. But instead of visualizing the doors opening and customers arriving, he fixates on what might go wrong. He begins to imagine lawsuits that haven't happened, reviews that haven't been written, losses that haven't occurred. He mentally rehearses his own failure daily, believing he's being cautious when in fact he's planting seeds of doubt and hesitation that begin to infect his decision-making. He delays launching, he micromanages, he second-guesses every move. In doing so, he squanders opportunities and erodes the confidence of those around him, not because his business lacks potential, but because he has allowed his imagination to serve fear instead of faith. The tragedy isn't just the delay in success, it's that he used his most powerful creative tool against himself. Consider a student preparing to speak in front of a class. She begins by picturing the audience laughing at her, mocking her mistakes, or staring silently in judgment. These are not predictions based on fact, they are inventions of a fearful imagination. The reality is, most people in that room are too preoccupied with their own concerns to scrutinize her. But her mind doesn't care about facts, it cares about the narrative she feeds it. So it plays that false scenario over and over again until her hands shake, her mouth dries, and her thoughts scatter when she stands up to speak. That entire physiological response was driven by imagination misused. The same student could have used her imagination to rehearse success, to picture herself speaking confidently, connecting with the audience, and finishing strong. That would have brought calm, clarity, and confidence. But instead, she used her imagination to build a false world of rejection, and her body responded to it as if it were truth. What you control versus what you influence is one of the most vital distinctions a person must learn if they are to master their mind and direct their energy wisely. Many people fall into anxiety and frustration not because their challenges are insurmountable, but because they are expending their emotional capital on things they were never meant to control in the first place. Control resides within the realm of your thoughts, decisions, beliefs, habits, and attitude. Influence, however, lies just beyond that. It's the ripple effect of your actions, words, and presence on the world around you. The problem arises when individuals confuse the two and begin trying to force outcomes, manipulate timelines, or alter other people's choices. This misalignment creates internal chaos. Peace of mind and effective action begin when you take full ownership of what lies inside your control and release attachment to what only lies within your influence. Imagine an employee striving for a promotion. What is in her control? Her work ethic, punctuality, quality of output, professionalism, and the attitude she brings into every meeting or project. She can choose to develop new skills, to solve problems creatively, to build strong relationships with her coworkers. These actions are within her direct control. But whether her supervisor ultimately recognizes her efforts, or whether the company's budget allows for a promotion that year, or whether a more politically connected colleague is chosen over her, those lie outside the domain of control. They reside in the sphere of influence at best. If she begins to obsess over her boss's decision, compare herself endlessly to others, or try to manipulate outcomes by aligning herself with office gossip or politics, she steps outside of her power. Her mind becomes entangled in forces she cannot command. But if she remains rooted in what she can control, delivering consistent value, nurturing her own growth and showing leadership. Even without a title, her influence grows organically, and opportunities will often gravitate toward her in due time. Take also the example of a parent trying to raise a respectful and responsible child. The parent can control the environment they provide, the values they teach, the discipline they administer, the example they set through their own behavior. They can control their words, their tone, and their consistency. But they cannot ultimately control how the child receives those lessons, how the child interprets their own experiences, or the choices that child will make as they grow older. These outcomes may be influenced but never fully controlled. If the parent tries to control the child's thoughts, emotions, and every decision, they will likely breed resentment or rebellion. But when the parent focuses on mastering their own reactions, maintaining open communication, and demonstrating love with boundaries, they plant seeds of influence that often flourish in the child over time. The challenge is in accepting that even your best efforts don't guarantee a specific result, but they do increase the likelihood of a positive one. Relaxation is often misunderstood as laziness or passivity, especially in a culture that glorifies nonstop hustle and relentless activity. But true relaxation is not the absence of ambition, it is the sharpening of it. It is a deliberate, strategic act that renews the mind, resets the nervous system, and allows higher-order thinking to emerge. The person who can relax under pressure has an undeniable advantage over the one who panics or forces action from a place of tension. When the mind is relaxed, it operates more effectively. Ideas flow more freely, intuition becomes sharper, and decisions are made with clarity rather than emotional reactivity. In contrast, tension narrows perception. It causes the brain to fixate on threats and limits creativity to short-term survival responses. Relaxation, therefore, is not something to be indulged in only after success is achieved. It is something that makes success possible in the first place. It is a psychological reset that allows the performer, the leader, the thinker, or the creator to stay aligned, focused, and resilient through pressure. Consider the example of a world-class tennis player stepping onto the court in a championship match. Physically, both players might be equally trained. Their techniques, diets, and regimens are nearly identical, but the match is often won not by the stronger athlete, but by the calmer mind. The player who can slow their breathing, release mental noise, and find that flow state of relaxed focus can respond with instinct, precision, and fluid movement. The player who tightens up, who lets anxiety dictate their motion, will miss shots, make unforced errors, and lose their edge. The champion isn't the one trying harder, it's the one trusting more. And that trust is only accessible through relaxation, which creates space for instinct and training to merge into performance. In the business world, the same principle applies. An executive making a high-stakes decision under stress might default to fear-based reasoning, cutting corners, hoarding control, or rushing a deal out of desperation. These decisions often backfire because they are born from contraction, not expansion. But an executive who intentionally takes a moment to step back, go for a walk, meditate, breathe deeply, or even sleep on the decision often returns to the issue with fresh insight and emotional balance. That brief pause, that act of deliberate relaxation allows subconscious processing to occur. It shifts the problem from the surface-level noise to the deeper, more creative intelligence of the mind. The best negotiators, creators, and problem solvers understand this. They don't interpret rest as weakness, they treat it as a recalibration tool, a way to return to action with more force and foresight than before. Desire with detachment creates a magnetic force because it strikes the perfect balance between intensity and surrender, focus and freedom. Most people are taught to chase their goals with obsessive energy, clinging to the outcome as if their entire worth depends on it. But that tight grip often repels the very thing they want. It turns desire into desperation and desperation into fear. When your mind is consumed by the need for something to happen a certain way at a certain time, you interfere with the natural flow of events and block the intuitive, creative part of yourself that could guide you to success more gracefully. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you care without being controlled. You hold the vision of what you want, but you release the need to micromanage how and when it arrives. In doing so, you create a powerful psychological state, a burning desire that motivates action, paired with a calm confidence that allows you to remain steady even when results aren't immediate. That combination is magnetic. It draws people, opportunities, and ideas toward you because you operate from strength, not scarcity. Picture an artist working on a masterpiece. The artist has a clear vision, a deep longing to bring something beautiful into the world. That's desire. But if the artist becomes too attached to how the final piece must look, they begin to overwork it, correct every brush stroke, second guess every decision. The flow is disrupted. The inspiration dries up. What began as a passionate act becomes rigid and forced. But if the artist maintains detachment, if they trust the process and allow the work to evolve naturally, something extraordinary emerges. The creation becomes a dialogue between the vision and the moment. That's when true art happens. The same principle applies to entrepreneurship, relationships, and personal goals. When you want something so much that your identity depends on it, you create emotional friction that clouds judgment and stifles your progress. But when you want something deeply and simultaneously know you'll be whole regardless of the outcome, you enter a powerful space of attraction. You move toward your goal with inspired action, but without fear. People sense this energy. It's confident, creative, and unshakable. And more often than not, it produces better results than force ever could. Divine timing is often better than your deadline because it operates on a scale and intelligence far beyond human perception. While we map our lives around calendars, clocks, and carefully structured plans, the universe or God or life itself often works in ways that defy logic but serve a greater purpose. What feels like a delay is often a form of protection, preparation, or redirection. But because we are emotionally invested in our own timing, we perceive these pauses as punishment or failure. In truth, they are a form of grace. We may believe we are ready for a particular outcome, a promotion, a relationship, a financial breakthrough, but there are unseen variables at play. Perhaps the circumstances haven't yet aligned, or we haven't yet become the person capable of sustaining what we're asking for. When we force things before their season, we often end up overwhelmed, unprepared, or disappointed. Divine timing, on the other hand, delivers what we need when we are truly aligned with it, not just externally, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Imagine a young man eager to land his dream job right after college. He submits applications, attends interviews, and visualizes success daily. Months pass without an offer. Frustration sets in. Friends seem to advance while he remains stuck. It feels like the universe is ignoring him. But during that waiting period, he begins to develop new skills, take on freelance work, and learn resilience. He builds emotional endurance and professional clarity. Then, nearly a year later, a job opens up that perfectly matches his refined interests and hidden talents, something he never would have considered earlier. When he finally lands the role, he realizes that not only is it a better fit, but he himself is now a better version of who he was when he first started searching. The delay was not a detour, it was a transformation. The timing didn't match his original deadline, but it honored his deeper destiny. In hindsight, the wait makes perfect sense. The growth that occurred in the in-between was essential to the success that followed. Similarly, consider someone longing for a relationship, convinced they are ready to meet their lifelong partner. They pray, they manifest, they date, but nothing seems to click. The temptation to grow bitter or hopeless becomes strong. But during that seemingly barren season, they're being reshaped. Old wounds are being healed, identity is being solidified, and clarity about what they truly value is emerging. Then, almost unexpectedly, they cross paths with someone who doesn't just meet their expectations, but exceeds them in ways they couldn't have imagined. The connection is effortless, grounded, and mutual. And suddenly, the previous waiting season takes on a sacred meaning. Had the connection come earlier, it might have faltered under the weight of immaturity or emotional baggage. But now, both individuals are prepared not just for the joy, but for the responsibility of the union. Divine timing brought them together, not when they demanded it, but when they were both truly ready to receive and sustain it.